We're going to make sure we're live. It's Dean at Red Zone. I know it takes a second or two for everybody to get on right now. I apologize for the audio not being unbelievable, but some of us don't know how to work things properly anymore. Uh, I'm not new at this, but it feels that way sometimes. Georgia, Ole Miss, the Dogs are a narrow, not that narrow though, if we're being honest, about a 7 point favorite, something like that, to beat the Ole Miss Rebels. It's a matchup of uh, teams with 11 total wins and one loss by the Dogs to Alabama. The last time we were in, no, that's not right. Not the last time we were in Athens. It just feels that way. Getting back from Auburn at 5:30 in the morning will do that to you. But listen, it's a busy day in Athens. I would say it's not as nuts downtown as it was for the Alabama game, but this game is going to mean a lot for both these teams. Certainly for Ole Miss. I mean, if you look at Ole Miss, and if should the Rebels win this game, it is hard for me to pencil them anywhere other than the college football playoff. But we are talking about Ole Miss here, and they have had things in their grasp in the past, and it slipped away. So that can happen. It's going to be an important game for Georgia, for obvious, I would say, reasons. If you get going here and you win this game, um, it's not like it looked at the start of the season with some of these teams. Even the Jackets are slowing down. So this is a critical game. We've seen these two teams play one another a lot over the years. I apologize. Give me a moment here. Most of y'all are not watching yet, but you will be, I know, in a moment. I want to make sure we're completely good to go. Um, these two teams used to play each other every single year for decades. Now they don't. And so this is what we get with what we've got. We've got an expanded SEC, but we've got a massive top 10 showdown between the Revs and the Dogs. And this game is going to be, an important one for both. As I just said, Georgia 7.5, 6.5, 7.5. I saw it at 8 earlier this week. But you hear people every time the door rings. That means someone's coming in. Just check. It's 4 o'clock. You can still go eat downtown with no real problem yet. But look at Georgia. There's a lot. I saw Kirby on ESPN earlier today talking about how you know they really want to start fast. I don't think it's being overdone. I think the worrying about it is being overdone. I mean, it's a Georgia team that's 5-1. That you know, it's collective. You have to play well offensively and defensively if you want to get where you got to go during these seasons. And Georgia has, for the most part, done that. I mean, I wrote about this in Final Feelings on Thursday that Georgia this season has come down to basically like 6 plays, which was the I'm about to say Stetson. Gunner's throw to London Humphreys for a touchdown, the missed field goal by Tennessee, the fumble from Nate Frazier against Alabama, Cash Jones being denied on fourth down against Alabama, the Auburn fumble. It was a fumble. And then 2 plays later, when Josh McCray takes it 17 yards, and then boom, Georgia's off to the races. That has been this season. And, some of y'all know this, some of you don't. I mean, I'm a photographer. I'm on the field. I've covered Georgia forever, but all that time I've been on the field. And all you're doing as a photographer, you're waiting for the moment to happen, the big play to happen. And I will say this about dog posts: we've been ready for those moments just the same way. In the vast majority of the time, Georgia has. They have taken advantage of the moments and gotten it done. I've talked about this a lot. I'm not gonna go too far backwards on the Auburn game, but I don't know how that wasn't a touchdown for Georgia, considering if you take it step by step through things. I'm not sure how that was not a touchdown for Georgia. So um, that would have changed the game too, had that been a 10-7 halftime, and it almost was a 10-7, frankly, even without um, the Kyron Jones play. Kyron Jones, as we reported Wednesday night, I think, is out for a while. And then the breaking news a little bit earlier today from Georgia, you will see logos on the field for the first time ever. So the last 3 games of this season, You won't see red zone logos. Scott and Minnie are working on that, but it's going to be Delta Airlines, who's had a 4-decade partnership with Georgia. You know, I mean, they're not paying me, but they are the best. They are the best airline to fly. I can tell you that right now. I fly a lot of airlines, and they are the best one. So that's something you'll see. But we're downtown in Athens at Red Zone. People are trickling in. Some people would say they're pouring in. Um, and it's there's only so many more home games. It's this and then Charlotte and Texas, and that's it. So it's a great time to come shop for Christmas and the holidays downtown here in Athens at Red Zone, who's been a partner with us for years now. So yeah, I mean, let me try to get the comments up so I can answer questions. Sorry about that. I've been kind of sidetracked. Trevor is getting confused with there is no upstairs here. This is the Red Zone, which is on Clayton Street downtown. If you're at campus where the arch is, you're just going to walk north 1 block and take a left, and then they will be happy to help you. They have a slew of things. Slew is probably the wrong way to put it. To my right here, they have a set of this. If I were a 12-year-old, excuse me, if I were 8, I would have been wearing this out. So this is, quote, football guys. And you can get that for someone in your life for $30. It's not a bad deal. Red and black both. Looks like they're about to score a touchdown. Some of the people on the field are a little bit not paying attention, is what I would say. But look, Ole Miss got a new quarterback. Even during this season, they have a new quarterback that they've been employing. And he is definitely dynamic. Watch watch the second half of Ole Miss and Washington State. That was not a great look for the Rebels, but that's sometimes what Ole Miss can do, which is fall asleep. And they've done that through the years. It's not just this season, but Georgia can't fall asleep. They're going to have to get out there and play well pretty quick. So here's where I'm at with this team right now, which is that they've shown they have the capability to really to get out there and play well and in the second half and all of that. But you really would like to start faster, and that's what people keep talking about. And I understand that. I do. I also know how well this team can play when they get kind of moving pretty well, and I don't know when that's going to happen, but that will happen at some point this season. When you think about, they didn't start well against Tennessee last year, but they did win it by a pretty decisive amount, 34-17 win over the Vols last year. I would say, last year against Texas on the road, they shot out of the cannon there. They beat up State pretty well a year ago. They beat up Auburn and Athens pretty well a year ago. So they're not going to be limited forever as it relates to well, they could. That's the thing. You just don't ever know. But that is definitely the big topic of discussion. I was talking to a couple of friends of mine who just came in from Raleigh just now, and I was unaware that Luke Combs was playing tonight. I think at Georgia Theater. So that's a classic venue with an artist that to me seems pretty authentic. There's a lot of country out there that's not super authentic. So and I don't know if Luke Combs is country. He seems like it to me. But yeah, man. I mean, let's just see where this team goes. The defense is allowed to get off the field on third down. They've really not done that in a great way so far this season. But at the beginning of games, you saw Auburn go 4 for 4 in the first quarter. You saw Alabama go whatever it was. But that's because on first down, they're getting 3-4 yards, and you're in a situation where you really can exploit on third down and convert. Third and three. Third and three is not that hard to convert. It's a lot easier to convert than 3rd and 9 because situationally, there's more things you can employ. I mean, there's almost no play that's out of bounds as it relates to a 3rd and 3. So that's what Georgia is kind of looking at and paying attention to coming into this game. Kirby was saying on ESPN earlier today on Pat McAfee's show that he wanted to play fast and loose starting the game. he said, I thought it was a very good segment, to be honest with you. Most of the time, those segments are not the greatest on earth. But in this case, he was talking about how, they don't necessarily make halftime adjustments. They just play better after the half. I think, so many narratives start building about things after a while. And again, we're at Red Zone downtown in Athens on Clayton. I'm going to walk around in a minute here and just show you all some of the stuff they've got. But the children's section is to my left here, and there's a women's section near the back of the store. You are confronted immediately with the sort of old school 1980s, 1990s champion apparel, which I can show you immediately here. That stuff, that was standard gear in the 80s and 90s, particularly in the 90s, I would say. But there's narratives, and we've got two narratives about Georgia right now. One narrative is they start slow. That's A. And then B, this is a young team. So, at some say, at some point here, this is not about being young. Okay, you're half the way through the season. You have had enough experience. You played Alabama. You played at Neyland. You've played at Jordan Hare. At some stage, like, yeah, you might be youngish, like Juan Gaston and Glover on the right-hand side. Um, but like they played 24 quarters of football at this stage, or 20-ish, whatever it may be. After a while, it's just football. Like, again, I talk about when I was playing back in the day a lot. I talked to Dan Schmatzer, who was my coach, a 29-year head basketball coach at Coker. And he used to say to us, I don't want to hear about y'all being young, because we had a pretty big freshman group when I first got to Coker. And he said, either you're good young or you're bad young. And he never said that when we were playing well. So Georgia at this point is not that young. They're young-ish. The other thing is the sort of starts to the games. Well, they started well against Marshall. They started well against Kentucky. Not against Austin Peay, I wouldn't say. But, you're allowed to go out and play well. You're allowed to get off the field on third down. I mean, there's nothing saying that Georgia's got to struggle the way that they have. They totally need to attack the first quarter in a way that they're completely capable of, but that's up to them, and that's up to the kids on the team to do it. Kirby was saying today that they don't do much in the way of halftime adjustments. The one thing he was saying is sort of obvious is they can't put new schemes in, they can't get new players, and the thing that's probably less obvious is there's not a lot of time at halftime. You're talking about, practically speaking, I don't know, 16 to 18 minutes. So it's not the same for me as it is for them. But, I get off the field. That takes about 2 minutes, I would say. And they can't leave early like I can. Um, and then they got to warm up at some point, too. So the halftime is very condensed in reality. So there are some things you can do. But if you're not adjusting on the fly, um, I think people schedule stuff out for Georgia. They do those things, and they've had success with them. Alabama must have converted 4 third downs on that first drive, and in the beginning of that game, they converted consistently. Is that because there was no pressure? Well, you're not going to have pressure if you're in 3rd and 3 and you're running it, or like they're getting the ball out real quick. So there's a lot of things that have just not gone their way because of what's happened on 1st and 2nd down, and that's an important part of that. You, I, I predicted Georgia to win this game. I was jumpy about the Mississippi game last year. I can actually go back. I'm very curious now that I say that. What I actually wrote, I may have picked Georgia, but I may have hedged in a massive way. I know with Notre Dame, I just it didn't seem quite the way it needed to be going into that. It was just too much. There was too much unknown in that situation there. I said at the end of Final Feelings last year uh, this is a must-win game for Georgia if it wants to secure its playoff spot early. The loss means each game from here on out is a must-win. That turned out not to quite be true because of Alabama losing. And Kirby has already expressed this season he doesn't like playing with his back against the wall. I said that's exactly where Georgia will be if it loses Saturday. It certainly should not, but it could. And then I think Georgia was favored in that game narrowly, but I don't know. I don't, the difference. There are some significant differences. I would say mainly that Mississippi has pumped a lot of. Uh, I picked Georgia. That was a mistake. Yeah. I said I'm probably overreacting here, but Georgia needs to be ready for this moment because it's an important one. Georgia should win this game, but Ole Miss is noticeably better on the defensive line. The quarterback is the same. Wide receivers will be good. Run game isn't ideal, but it might not. But it might not be fun in the rain. Ole Miss has shown it can score. Yada yada yada. So um, look, I think they are in position to do this and win this game, but they got to go do it. That's the problem is you've got to go do it. Does it really matter that this is the first time the quarterback from Mississippi has played on the road? See, I don't think it really does. He's played a ton of football. Once you get used to the noise, which does take about I would say half a quarter or a quarter, then you're in good shape at that stage. Again, we're at Red Zone downtown in Athens. You can see the shirt behind me. It's actually a shirt I'm wearing right now. This is the front of it. This is the back. This is of Matt DeBerry, Ryan Curley, and I. Our relatively popular riding home show after the games. What will it be like after this game? What will Mississippi doesn't play here much anymore. It's been a long time since they won 1996. I was at that game, actually. Mike Bobo threw a pass backwards. I don't think I've ever seen that since. But that was a very frustrating loss for Georgia. Tommy Tuberville. I'm trying to remember. I think that was. I don't know if that was the Pine Box game that Tommy Tuberville said he was the only way he was leaving Mississippi was in a coffin. That turned out to be completely not true. But that was a huge win for Tuberville and Ole Miss coming to Athens and getting that win. That was a week after Georgia Auburn in 1996. So that 96 Georgia team, they just could not. They were so inconsistent. Turnovers were a real challenge for them, particularly against Ole Miss, actually, too. But that season, they just, Mike was turning the ball over. He wasn't the only one, though. Robert Edwards was just had a real challenge holding onto the ball. So it was, that day in November of 1996 was really one of the better wins of Ole Miss for that decade. I mean, Ole Miss, it's like we have to keep things in perspective here. The difference between the brand of Georgia certainly and the brand of Mississippi, it's not the same. It's not the same universe. This is like I wouldn't say Indiana because Ole Miss has had a better run of football than Indiana, but um, it would be something like Ohio State or Michigan playing Maryland being really good suddenly, like Maryland's not, or maybe Wisconsin. Like Ole Miss has never played in the SEC championship game, which is kind of shocking considering it's been around for as long as it has. Ole Miss never won the West the whole time they were there. They got into a game with Alabama where if Eli Manning won that game, um, they would have gone on to play in it, but they didn't. They didn't win the game. They shouldn't have, but they didn't. And then you look at what Lane has done. Certainly, this last say 18 games. He had them on the precipice of going to the playoff. All they had to do was win at Florida, and they completely imploded. Jackson Dart completely imploded. Mississippi played poorly. I think the challenge for Ole Miss coming into this is not just, you're playing one of the marquee schools in the conference and one of the better schools in the country because, Ole Miss is one of the better teams in the country. It's there's always surrounding different programs. There's different, I guess, stuff is the wrong way to put it. There's different, expectations that are going on. And Ole Miss got so close last year to go into the playoff. And that win over Georgia, and then they stormed the field, ripped down the goalpost only to not. That was the biggest win. The people that when we were leaving Oxford that afternoon, the consensus amongst the Ole Miss fans was that was the biggest win that they had in decades because it all but put them in the playoff from their perspective. And then they fumbled it away, just like completely fumbled it away. And when they lost on the Saturday before Thanksgiving, then Alabama lost the Saturday night before Thanksgiving. It was like, what is happening out here? And that is what, that's what opened the door to Georgia playing in the SEC championship and then winning it. So we are, that's good proper context. This is not the same. These two teams are not all the same. The quarterbacks are different. The defenses are different. And therein lies the challenge for Ole Miss. And if we're being completely honest here, Ole Miss is having some real challenges stopping the run. And, not that Auburn didn't, but Auburn stopped it enough. Ole Miss has not stopped it well at all this year. And that's going to be a real challenge for them tomorrow because this is not a home game. And, with some of the stuff that we wrote about over on Final Feelings, and this is a Georgia team that has been really running effectively. And they did so. They ran enough against Auburn. It wasn't unbelievable, but it was enough. And my question about this game is, can Georgia stop Ole Miss's explosion? Can Ole Miss stop Georgia running the ball? I don't think Georgia's going to get stopped running the ball. I think that's the problem is you want to be explosive all the time. And you want to do that. The other thing to not ignore here is, Ole Miss runs the ball pretty well. They're not bad at it. They're a team that really would like to run the ball if they could, but it's sort of overshadowed by they make big plays. Well, you don't make big plays if you're not running it effectively. I mean, like that's how this works. It's just like basketball. It's like, hey, let's go rebound the basketball. Oh well, why did we lose? You got out rebounded by 15 boards. I mean, like what are you talking about? So you got to want to go do it. You got to want to be physical. You got to want to have no problem chasing down a quarterback. You've got to have all the stuff that's worked on all the time. You got to still have interest in doing that, and that's the challenge this Saturday for both teams. Is so far this season they have played some challenging games. I mean, Ole Miss with Kentucky, LSU, Washington State, and Arkansas. Those games were all one score, not even touchdown games. Georgia has had the same situation. Let's just say Auburn was a touchdown game. It wasn't, but it was 10 points, But, Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, those have all been competitive games. So these two teams have played 7 competitive games. Is it going to be like, what I mean by competitive is like tight. Or is it going to be tight tomorrow? I don't know. My view of the world is it might not be as tight as people are thinking it will be. I don't know. Um, when you watch Mississippi, they can be very explosive for sure. The only team that has been explosive against Georgia this season is Tennessee, and they're scoring 40 points a game. Okay, no problem. Mississippi's not doing that. They scored 24 against LSU. They scored 23. Whatever it was against Washington State. Like this is not like explosive Mississippi. So it's not the same as we've seen in the past from them. And 2 years ago when this game, I think Ole Miss got up 14-7, something like that, and then Georgia just went, and that was a really good. That was like Quinton Junkins was on that Mississippi team. They had Jackson Dart. They had some players on that offense. They couldn't stop Georgia. It's possible we could see a situation where, this is a really tight game. It's also possible you could see Georgia win by 17 points. So this is not the same as it was a year ago. And, the loser of this game, particularly if it's Georgia, is not in a great position necessarily. But if you're Ole Miss and you lose a road game to a top 10 team, like, you're fine. You'll be all right. Like, their season, that's the other challenge right now for Ole Miss. Like, Georgia's played, this will be their 4th conference game. No, this will be their 5th, right? Kentucky, Ole Miss, Kentucky. Well, this will be. So Ole Miss, Auburn, Kentucky, Alabama, Tennessee. This will be Georgia's fifth. This, I think, will be Ole Miss's as well. But they have not played the top end of the league yet, except LSU, and they won that game, and they should have won it probably by a little bit more. But they got into a total knife fight with LSU on the road. Excuse me, at home. Excuse me, and it you can only sort of judge by so much what teams did heading into games. That's the other thing. Here's Guy with a question, and again, I'll answer this because our friends at Red Zone down here on Clayton Street downtown in Athens have a sign on their door about this. This is how do you feel about Stripe Stanford? And it says, personally, I like the administration involving the fans. So here's what I think. I think if you're going to do it, you don't announce it or promote it on Thursday at noon. You start with Kirby Smart on Monday at noon, and you do it that way. I, that's what I think. I think if you're going to do that, it's curious. I'm kind of whatever. I'm old enough to remember the blackouts, all those things. Those were very organic as well. But I was saying, I think I was talking to Ryan earlier today, and in the case of the blackout in '07, Mark got up there on Monday and was talking about it and so forth. So I agree as it relates to Georgia's got to evolve. So I get it. This is something that I talk about a lot. I was on the board at my institution where I went to undergrad and played for 9 years. And these are the sort of things that, like, you don't want to miss these things. When there's something bubbling up from the surface, you want to take it seriously because people care. They're passionate. They want things to, they want to be involved. And would this be my first choice? It would not. It would not be my first choice. But it could be a very curious thing. However, the installation of this idea should have started on Monday, period. And this person here, who's you're kind of blacked out from that because of the sticker, he has to say it on Monday because no one, I mean, doing it on social media and everybody being like, what am I supposed to wear? No, it's too late. So my suspicion is it will look good if most people do it. But I was talking to somebody today who works at Georgia and was saying that their wife was like, no, I'm not doing that. It's too late. I already know what I'm going to wear. It wouldn't have been too late on Monday. But, if you're Georgia, if you're them, you're kind of stuck a little bit because um, they don't know it's bubbling up from the surface on Monday necessarily. So I get it, but like if you're going to do it, that needs to be thought about ahead of time. There's a question on here from Kevin. Does Red Zone have an online store? Yes, it does. You can go to UGA-redzone.com and check that out. You can also type in Riding Home T-shirt, and that will take you to their store as well. And there's no shortage of things. Now, Mindy, how long does it take to mail things out? Let's say someone were to order something this afternoon. But in this section, I would say it's probably going to get mailed out Monday. I would think not today. So they could probably get it by Thursday. It would depend on kind of where you are in the country. But look, if you cannot make it downtown, or if you're not in town for the Texas game or the Charlotte game, or you're not here's what I say to people all the time, okay, is that if you live in Gwinnett County or you live in Madison, well, Madison's not that far, but like if you're in Augusta, just run up for the afternoon and eat downtown, drop into Red Zone, and shop. I mean, think about all of the holiday and Christmas gear that you can get right now. You don't have to worry about it, or you can wear it to the game. Like we are kind of getting to the point where I showed the champion sweatshirts earlier. We're getting to the point here where you're gonna need a sweatshirt soon. Now I know how this goes. You got the game this week. It's gonna be pretty much perfect weather. I would say 70s ish. I'm gonna probably run later, and it's gonna be in the upper 70s. Tomorrow, I think it could talk to the 80s. I don't know if that's actually accurate. Let me make sure. We could get very close to the 80s tomorrow. It's going to be hotter than some of these other games that Georgia's played in. So that's kind of curious. That might be to Georgia's advantage, to be honest with you. But once you go down to Jacksonville, like when you come back, the weather changes. You get to basically a 5:30 sunset, 6 o'clock sunset. and you're going to need a sweatshirt. There's no better place to buy it than here. And they have got all sorts of, I'm going to walk up around at the end. They've got no shortage of them, including what is a very specific to red zone sweatshirt with the national championships that Georgia's got. I found it amazing that Georgia could play so well against a team this past week that won 6 national championships in the summer. It was amazing the run that Auburn was on this summer, and now they've lost 3 games. That's got to be disappointing for Auburn. Hugh Freeze is actually in some serious trouble, I will say that. I don't know how serious a trouble. I also saw, I'm just going to keep ranting. I saw Paul Feinbaum get completely, like, there was 2 things that Paul said this week that I was just like, what, first of all, he was talking about how that was clearly not a fumble. Look, there was plenty not clear Saturday night. If it was anything, it was a fumble. It was certainly not clearly a touchdown. Okay, so let's just start there. So the false outrage and the sort of homerism towards the schools in Alabama, whatever. But come on, y'all, let's do a little better than that. And then secondly, and I called people about this because like I called some Auburn buddies of mine, and like Paul was talking about how this game is like Auburn Georgia is like a fraction less important to the Auburn people than Alabama. I was like, no, it's not. I've seen the Iron Bowl. They are psychopaths, and that is a whole thing. And that's just that. It's just not this. Georgia Auburn is not even remotely close to what the Iron Bowl is like. Georgia Florida and Georgia Auburn. I mean, I think Georgia Florida is a lot more intense than Georgia Auburn personally, because there's more of everyone there. But listen, there's not much like the Iron Bowl, and I just Georgia Auburn is an awesome classic rivalry. It is again, I say this all the time. Georgia's got 3 rivals. They don't have more than 3. They have 3. Just have 3. They have big games they play, but their rivals are, and there is necessarily no order. Their rivals are Tech, Auburn, and the Gators. That's their rivals. They are not rivals with Kentucky. They are not rivals with South Carolina or Tennessee or Clemson or all these things. Yes, they played big games against Clemson. Yes, they played number 1 Tennessee and Athens and all these things. It's not the same. It is not the same. And Auburn, Georgia is not the same as the Iron Bowl. And it's not a fraction. It's several fractions different. And I love Paul, but like he's wrong on that deal. And he knows he's wrong. That's the thing. It's like, what are you talking about right now? What will we be talking about after Georgia and Ole Miss play what is, a top 10 showdown in Sanford Stadium? Kirby Smart's 7-0 in top 10 matchups in Sanford, or excuse me, against top 10 teams. I was going to say I was going to have a hard time remembering. Because they've not played tons of top 10s in Athens. They've had Georgia, Tennessee in 02 for sure. Excuse me, in 22. Auburn. But see, Auburn in 16 was not a top 10 matchup for Georgia. Was not ranked. They beat top 10 Auburn. So it's been 7. One of the other top 10s though was Georgia, Mississippi, 2 years ago when they throttled the Rebels and send them retreating back home. You like that? I can do this all day. I can do this. The puns and the Black Bear stuff and like the Land Shark deal. It's fun to make fun of Ole Miss. They got to kind of. I mean, one of the people that's closest to me in my life is my high school basketball coach, Jack Waters. He's one of the most famous Ole Miss basketball players ever, and went on to play in the NBA and all this stuff. But it is fun making fun of the stupidity that comes out of Oxford, and there's a lot of it, by the way. It's not like a one-time thing. So they have done their whole thing. I had Tommy Tuberville coming out in a coffin, and he's the head coach at Auburn in 1990. I mean, it's like a disaster sometimes over there, but they are good right now. I'll tell you that right now. They're a good team, and Georgia better be ready to party. And Scott and Mindy have got this, or I'm here at Red Zone. I should just say Scott and Mindy here at Red Zone downtown in Athens, and I'm looking up at this flag that they have sold forever. Surely there it is, right there above me actually, and that 21 and 22 defense, that's not normal. Like comparing that defense to what you see all the time, that's not normal. That's like comparing Bo Jackson and Herschel and people like that to running backs. It's not the same thing. Todd Gurley is not on that football field right now. But the thing about the 21-2 teams, particularly by the time the 22 team had played, they had played a lot of football, a lot. I mean, Broderick Jones was on that 22 team, if I'm not mistaken. You're talking about Broderick, Stetson, Lad McConkey. It was no shortage of really, you know, experienced players, particularly on offense, that were playing a lot. Defense was not as old, but you did have Christopher Smith. I mean, Christopher Smith had played a ton of football. It may be that this team struggles the whole season in terms of playing well and so forth. It may be that it feels like a light switch got turned on, but that's not really what's happening. It's just that they've played the amount of snaps and gotten the reps they need to really just feel comfortable playing. I mean, I talk way too much about what it was like for me in college, but I can just tell you that first couple months, that is tricky, man. Like it's getting used to everything, and a lot of these guys are getting used to life, not just in college, but playing college football at a very high level. They have played certainly two very good teams in Alabama and Tennessee, but they have also played two tricky games on the road. And that at some stage, the game you're going to play, um, you have played the most difficult game you're going to play that season. For Georgia in 22, it was the Ohio State game. It was the Missouri game, and then the Ohio State game. In 23, in the regular season, it turned out to be Tech, actually, or Ole Miss, one of the two. Um, but we don't know what these seasons hold. When you start looking at this thing, and everybody looked at the schedule and said, "Oh, this is brutal," and it is brutal. This league is brutal. I mean, you got Vanderbilt as a essentially field goal favorite over LSU. It's in Nashville, which is a really odd place to play, by the way. But it's this league has become very challenging. That also ignores like the three ABC games are all ranked matchups. This is the only weekend of the year where all 16 SEC schools are playing uh, SEC games. So you've got your eight, games. I grew up in DeKalb County, so some of this math could be wrong, but um, it's a challenging weekend in the league. And on top of that, South Carolina, Oklahoma, that is like a really neat game. I'm just going to say, I mean, Carolina can totally beat them. Totally can beat them, particularly if they play decent on offense, which they've not been doing that. So I think tomorrow, I think there's going to be a lot of nerves. Although it's not at all like the jumpiness that I saw before Alabama. I think the fan base seems pretty comfortable and at ease right now. They've got this stripe thing to look forward to. We'll see how that goes. I will say in the future, though, if you're going to stripe the stadium, I would put the the white section on the side of the stadium that has the sun. So I know the students want a blackout, and I get that, but there's going to be hot on that side of the stadium. On the I always get confused with sides, the home side, the press box side, the shaded side. That should be the side in black. But I'll be rolling around down there on the ground, hopefully not breaking my toe like I tend to do in some of these games, and taking it from there. But if I were to, if you if you're going to do it differently, or if you're going to do it again, that's what I would do. I would not put the section that's facing the sun in dark colors, but the students aren't going to care. I'm curious to see how well this works, because usually you need a lot of buy-in from the beginning of the week. If people throw this together in about 48 hours, that'd be pretty impressive, to be honest with you. I think that would be kudos to Georgia. Now, there's some old timers who are sort of anti doing this, and that's fine. I mean, like, whatever, man. just as a flashback, and it's not the same thing at all. It's not. But I remember the blackout in '07. By '08 with the Bama game, everybody knew what the story was because Georgia blacked out the Superdome against Hawaii. That was probably one of the most lopsided games I've ever seen. They crushed them. As it relates to the 7 game, there was Mark had said Mark Richt had said at the beginning of the week we want everybody, the kids were saying that the players, it was very much amplified, but there was still some, I don't know if this is going to happen. I remember coming out from the underneath where the photographers sit where we work. So if you look at Sanford Stadium, you've got the bridge side, and then you got the other side of the stadium, and the curve. Well, we're underneath the curve, and we walk out the tunnel opposite of the opposing team. So you're sitting in there, and the story goes like this. I'd gone the night before to watch A.J. Harmon play. If you don't know who A.J. Harmon is, you'll be fine. He's playing at Jefferson County oh man, I can't remember the name of that town. But he was playing down there that night, and he was picking between Clemson and Georgia. And he was going on an official visit later that day. And it was him, Blair Walsh, Jeremy Longo. I think there might have been one other official visitor. It might not have been. And, Georgia comes out. They're warming up, and, here's Auburn. They're in all white. And, Georgia comes out, and they're in their red uniforms. And this was, again, the fall of 2007. And at one point in the spring of '07, Mark Richt and I were outside of Buttsmere, and it was just me and him. We were talking about just whatever. And I said to him, I very remember saying to him, have you ever thought about changing the jersey at all? And the wild part about that is, so he said, I didn't write it down or anything, but he said, no, because when we play on TV, I want people to know it's Georgia. So he may have thought that I knew something that I did not. I did not know anything, because soon thereafter, in I think probably April or May, Mark and Georgia had to order the black jerseys from Nike. It's not like now where they could just sort of boom do things. They had to get the orders in and so forth. That was my understanding of it. And so I asked Mark that, and I'm sure he thought I knew something that I did not. I did not know anything, but he was that week. The kids didn't even know. I think there were 4 players that know, or it was a senior class. So it's either 4 or 12 players, and that was it. So it was like Keelan Johnson, Thomas Brown, etc. AJ Bryant. I mean, like, that was it. It was not a lot of people. And Fernando Velasco for sure, who played at Jefferson. So I get to the game. There's A.J. Harmon. He's in Blair, A.J. Harmon, Jeremy Longo. And they go into the locker room, and the old locker room at Georgia was right by the photography lounge. And the lights get turned out. This is about 20 minutes to go before the game. Georgia come off the field. And Coach Richt is talking to the whole team, and Longo and Jeremy and Blair Walsh and them are in there. And someone cuts the lights, and the old locker room sucked. It was not nice. It was just not great. And they cut the locker room lights for I think about 90 seconds. And when they turned the lights back on, the black jerseys were in front of all the players. I guess the trainers had kind of run around doing what they had to do. And then boom, the players had the black jerseys, and they had to get the red jerseys off and put the black jerseys on. And I remember the way that A.J. Harmon and Jeremy Longo, and I think Blair Walsh explained to me one time, just the pandemonium that was in the locker room at the time. So I think I was actually the first person who was not with the program that saw the players in black jerseys, which was wild, because at the time I would photograph the team. They would come out of the middle of the closed end zone. They would come out of the middle. So I was in there with a flash. If you know anything about photography, probably not the greatest idea, but I shot the flash off the top of the underneath of Sanford, and everybody, they were in all black. Well, the tops were black, silver, and like I remember on the field, my Wes Mullenberg was doing videography, and the cheerleaders saw it and they knew because the crowd had not seen it yet. The whole crowd was in black. The whole crowd was in black. Like everybody played ball. It's not like Georgia fans typically, but everybody did it. And the cheerleaders saw the kids before they were coming out, and they had the banner up. And one of the cheerleaders about lost her mind that they were in black. And then they came in, man, that was a huge pop of noise when they came on the field. And I remember, too, Donnell Ellerby, who went on to play for the Ravens, who's number 33 for Georgia for a long time. The Sanford Stadium PA had Back in Black by AC/DC, and Donnell Ellerby could not have been having a better time before the kickoff. And then Auburn got up 10-0 or something like that. Auburn had the lead late in the third, if not early in the fourth, and then Georgia just flew past them. I think Asher Allen Tucker got an interception at the start of that game, and Brandon Cox, I think, was the quarterback. Brandon Cox. It was not a good night for him. But Auburn, I think, had a quick lead at that point in the game or soon thereafter. But Auburn was going to get rolled. It was just a matter of time when that would be. Here's a question about the basketball program, which I will answer. Why can't Georgia be a consistent tournament team, and what will it take for them to be like that? Better players, first of all. I'm curious. I won't talk a lot about basketball the night before a top 10 matchup, but I will say this. I am curious to see how good these players are. Ryan Curley, who's worked with me for some time and is a big basketball guy, he is convinced they have some players. We'll see. And I think the biggest thing for them right now is, Mike White, if he can get back to the tournament this year as well, I think that you will see more consistency at Georgia. Under Mike White, they've been pretty consistent. They've gotten better. They're not winning national championships. I wouldn't expect them to under Mike White. But Mike White's not the guy to hoist trophies. He's probably the guy before a guy, though. And that's important to get. I mean, back to football. Do you have the success of Kirby without the success of Mark? I mean, I don't know about that. And I would say that as it relates to Mark, he, as good as Mark was, and he was very good, and he was drastically, for me, better than Jim Donnan. Jim Donnan did a lot to get Georgia where it needed to be so that, Mark could build off that. Here's Zachary with a question. What do you think about the pass rush against a quarterback like Chambliss and color rushing? I don't know what color rushing the stadium means. You're talking about the stuff in the stands? They're going to have to play discipline to keep the quarterback where he's not giving you real trouble. The sort of the good news, if you want to call it that, about not being great at rushing the passer is maybe you can hem him up the whole time, and you're not just flying people at him and then lose contain. It might be that Georgia's like, all right, we're just going to try to get this guy between the hashes and just kind of chill out there and take it from there. It could be tricky though. I mean, like he really can move. He's very he's good. It's just that's all there is to it. But it may be that they say, hey, look, we're going to do it this way, and that's how we're going to do it. I think in theory, you always want to have someone who rushes the passer, gets the quarterback down. To rush the passer and not get him down, that's losing contain. And with this cat in particular, with his ability to run, he's been very effective, even in SEC play. He's been very effective getting yards that matter for Ole Miss. We are downtown in Athens. We're at Red Zone here, who have been great friends of ours for years. And the stock here is significant, and I think people have certainly rolled in to town. The traffic has not been as bad as it was for Alabama, I will say that, but it has been. You can tell it's a big home weekend. And listen, I'll give my speech again right now, which is there's only so many of these. And, downtown Athens, there's not a lot of places like it on earth. There's unique places like Red Zone. There's, there's a lot of places that you can shop and eat that aren't anywhere else. And certainly this is Red Zone specifically is just like Dog Post in that it's locally owned. It is curated in a way that is not, sort of corporate. It's got a soul, and we're going to keep our partnership with them as long as we can. And it's organic too. This is not like something that you know they have helped me for a long time. And this no, it's not that one. Well, anyway, here's the story. It was we had driven back from Indianapolis. Georgia won the national championship, and I remember Scott from all the years of coming downtown, and I didn't know his name or anything like that. So, I remember going in here and going through. You should have seen this place was jammed, and I think this was probably Wednesday. Georgia probably won it on. They won it on a Monday night. We drove back Tuesday. I think I came in Red Zone maybe on Wednesday or Thursday. I'm not sure which. And then the parade was Friday, and so I came in and I asked Scott. I was like, "Hey, what do you think should be on? I'm doing a book. What do you think should be on the cover of the book?" And his view of the world was that it should be Keely Ringo, and it was. And we had some fun with Keely actually at this store. Um, and so it was very organic, and they've been great friends, partners, however you want to call it, since. And I say it's impossible to do it without support like that, and y'all should support them because they. I'm not being facetious when I say it is not easy. It is possible. It is not easy to do without support from folks like Red Zone. So get yourself something here. There's a children's section. There's a women's section. It is becoming more crowded because it's good, and you don't have to fight the stupidity that is the bookstore. Here's Zachary again. Gunner has come through for Georgia all year, no question. Whenever we need him, the fourth down pass against the Balls, late touchdown against Auburn. Um, he says, "I believe in him." You should. I mean, so when you go and watch him play at Raven years and years and years ago, I guess before COVID, you'd watch Gunner. He completely knew how to play. There was no, he was not, he made plays constantly. It was something else watching him play. And the thing about it is that people would, there was always playing small schools. He was doing this. Yeah, he was, but there was like what's the word? He had a basic understanding of what he could do, how he could do it, etc. So he had no real problem playing the position at all. He, he, I knew he would make plays, over time. And when people were sort of freaking out after the Austin P game, I was like, what are you worried about? Like, this guy can do, you know, not everything, but he can, when you need him to make plays, he can. And he has. Now, let me go back to the Auburn play real quick because I loved it, but I was right there. So Kirby's complaint slash freak out moment. So again, I position myself a particular way on purpose on the field. And Jason Getz, who shoots for the Illinois Journal Constitution, does the same exact thing because he's smarter than me. So here comes Gunner. Gunner told me after the game that it was just a bootleg. Kirby wanted him to fall down because that would have been, a first down, and Auburn would not have been able to stop the clock, and the game would have been over. Georgia would have won it 13-10. So Gunner goes on and scores. There's two issues there. First of all, I am pro score whenever, but the way that he leapt into the end zone, he only had one hand on the ball, so that is a problem. And then secondly, when you're leaping into the end zone, if you lose control of the ball, you are turning it over. And at that stage, you're turning it over with Auburn having the capability not just to go down the field and kick it, but go down the field and win. Now, we have a relationship here. We both know that Auburn wasn't going to do anything because they couldn't do anything. But still. So the eruption from the corner that was the Georgia fan base that's been in that same corner at Auburn for decades was significant, and they were very happy to win the game and to get on to this game, which is a pretty significant showdown between top 10 teams. Now, has Ole Miss dealt with the same that has Ole Miss dealt with the same sort of schedule Georgia has? No, but they've handled their schedule generally speaking. I mean, the win over LSU was not nothing, and I think that was an important moment too. Jay is asking about So Poly Outdoor Furniture. So they have a chair right there. So they're still around. You should be ordering from them. It's outstanding quality for sure. But for now, we're in. Oops, let me keep this back up here. We're downtown in Athens. It's a great place to come shop and hang out before the game. But yeah, all the hand wringing about Gunner to start the season was a little excessive. If you watched him play in high school, it's nothing new. All the stuff he's done there's nothing new about what he's doing. He understands how to play. Nothing, sort of freaks him out. You know, Maybe he should be more adventurous than he's been, but with the ball. But you do want to possess the football. Someone's asking, Jay again is asking. I had some stuff taken off my face with some old, what are they called? The electric things that burn off precancerous stuff. So, yeah, we're taking care of ourselves. I know I am. Y'all better be too, because we got a long way to go here. It's going to be a long December, as Counting Crows would say. We've got a long way to go. Georgia certainly could host a playoff game, a few days before Christmas. That would be curious to see. I would be very curious to see that, actually. It would mean you're not winning the conference. I don't think that's the end of the world, though, to be honest with you. I think that, we're at the point here where the best team in the regular season has not won the last two national championships. So the best team in 2024 in the regular season was Oregon. They got beat by like a million in the Rose Bowl. Best team in the 2023 season was Georgia. They lost by 3 to Alabama in the SEC championship game. The sport is going to be really much more about the sport is going to be much more basketball centric. How are you playing at the end? And I think Kirby understands that. I don't think it's because his wife played and understands that you got to surge in basketball, and now you do too in football. But at the same time, he said, I think after the Austin Peay game or the Tennessee game, I don't know, everything's like melding together now. I think it was in Athens. He said, if we keep getting better, we're going to be where we want to be by the end of the season. And the only thing that people want to see is this team win the national championship. I mean, that's it. Come to the concert. I don't have tickets to the concert tonight. If you can get me 2 tickets, I will get to the concert. But I will likely be watching Miami play. I watch football a lot. I was telling a friend of mine that's in broadcasting for ESPN that I'd be watching his game Saturday. And I said, typically on off weekends, I watch about 12 games on Saturday. And then I watch, typically 15 for the weekend. Because there's 5 windows. There's the Friday night, Saturday noon, Saturday 3:30, 7, and then you got if you're a complete degenerate like somebody on the screen, you're watching the late games out west. Let me switch to the other iPads because they're about. Maybe these will go, maybe they will not. Because we can't use the microphone on the MacBook. That's not going to work. I can tell you that right now. So hang in there with me. We got a little bit more to talk about with Georgia and Ole Miss, top 10 match. I don't think this is the biggest game these two have ever played, but it's up there. Here we go. Old AirPods. AirPods. It's like I've never done this before. I can assure you I have. I might this is a moment in time with these two teams where, you know, you got to remember that Ole Miss and Georgia played one another for decades, and then when the East and West happened, they still played. And so this is a rivalry, if you want to call it that. I would not, but this is a game that has been played forever. And Georgia played. I would have to go back and look. I'm about to go back and look how many times they played Ole Miss. It's probably over 60. Um, Certainly over 60. But you know this. Let's see here. I know exactly where it is in the media guide too. Ole Miss. They played them. It's not been 60 times. So 34. So they have played one another 48 times, and a lot of that's me thinking it's been a particular way. They played every year from 1970 until that's nope, that's wrong. They played every year from 1966 until 2002 in Athens with Eli. So he came. Is that right? Yes, it was Eli Manning. The worst Georgia, one of the worst games I've ever been to in my life was Ole Miss Georgia 2020. Horrible game. It was in the freezing cold. It was literally freezing and raining. It was an awful affair. Georgia won the game. There might have been 50,000 people in the stadium. It was bad, but these two teams have played one another forever. So 1966 on, and Georgia really outside of the stretch from 93 to 96 where they Ole Miss won three of the four games. They've really had Georgia's had their way with Ole Miss. Now, with that said, just seems strange to say, but Ole Miss won two of the last three because the 2016 game in Oxford, which was a complete beating, and I saw coming. Uh, that game right there, woo. But that was Hugh Freeze while he was there. Georgia is 19-4 against the Rebels in Athens. They are 12-3 in games decided by 7 points or fewer against the Rebels. The longest win streak by Georgia in this series is 12 games. Georgia's 8-3 in the last 10 meetings. Last year's game in Oxford is the biggest win for Ole Miss over Georgia in series history. So these two teams have played not quite 50 times, all from just right on top of World War II starting. And that was the biggest win, that 18-point win by the Rebels in Oxford. They really, it could have been worse. It could have been worse for sure. It was not narrowly, but mainly because Georgia kept making Ole Miss kick field goals, or it would have been disastrous, more like 40 something to 10. Georgia just could not, move the ball on them, and Kirby warned us the whole time last year, um, but about Ole Miss, and they definitely have players. They are not as gifted as they were last year, but Georgia I don't think is necessarily individually as gifted either, and um, that's what they're having to navigate right now. I mean, how Georgia gets through this time is an important thing, because this game right here specifically, then you can set your schedule from there on out. You're not doing so bad. I mean, you host Texas, you go to state, you play. Let me say, you go to Jacksonville, a game you should win for sure. Now they may have a new coach at that stage, or they may have dismissed their coach. We'll see, but uh, this is a situation where if you win tomorrow, things change and they sort of go in your favor in a way that you know I think it's. I don't know that I don't like to use the term must win in October. I mean, but you can make the argument this is must win for Ole Miss considering what they've got coming up, because they've got a pretty significant slate. Georgia, you know, it if you win this game, I don't think 11-1 is out of the question at all. I mean, Tech, for all the hand wringing about Georgia Tech, you know, that's a game Georgia should win. That's a game that Georgia will be favored in, I would say significantly. That will be a game that Georgia should outmatch them physically. But Tech may just have a really, really good quarterback who can run, and that changes things. That makes it very complicated. Well, guess what Ole Miss has? They have the same exact thing. It's just that Haynes King is very experienced and all of that. Um, this is the whole point, though. Nothing about this is supposed to be easy because it's not easy to win. And this Georgia team tomorrow has an outstanding opportunity to take a hold of the season in a way that you know it's hard. It's hard to win in this league. It just is. And tomorrow being a 7.5, 6.5, 7.5 point favorite, about 75% of the time you should win. And I think to me they probably will win, but I was more concerned that Georgia would lose at Auburn than I was they'd lose this game. I do think Sanford matters. I do think playing on the road matters some. I don't know that it matters in a way that's crazy significant, but there are some red flags for the Rebels here coming into this game for sure. And I think that if you are Georgia, if you come out and play well at the start of the game, people may like take a sigh, like a breath and be like, oh, and then Ole Miss can rally right after that. So there's no, you gotta come play well the whole time and take it from there. But this is a game they should win, and we'll see. Our friends here at Red Zone will be open tomorrow morning. I want to make sure that y'all are dropping by. Of course, you can go to UGA-Redzone.com at any point in the near future to get all of your gifts for the holidays that are coming up or birthdays and take it from there. But I'm going to wrap it up here. We'll see you on Riding Home after the game. Georgia and Mississippi, a top 10 showdown in Sanford Stadium. Drop by our friends here at Red Zone when you're in Athens, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.